SiteCompli is the leading compliance solution serving over 1 billion, with a B, square feet of New York City real estate. Jack, VP of Product, is here, so you can say hi. And he's going to walk us through with the team some best practices in property operations and code compliance, and start highlighting how technology is around to change and disrupt and improve even this aspect of the real estate business. So a round of applause for the SiteCompli team.
How's it going, folks? I'm Brian Sakovich, Vice President of Data Insights. I'll start us off. So, you know, we get a good sense once you get that tenant in the building, right, what you're dealing with day to day in the property management world. You've got demanding tenants. They have needs, right? The heat breaks on your residential clients. Your elevator goes out on your commercial clients. You've got a vendor network that you're working with. You've got your fire life safety team. You've got your elevator contractor. You've got to keep these guys in the loop on the day-to-day happenings. They've got to keep you informed about what they're doing on your behalf when it comes to filings with the city, performing tests, things like that. Of course, you've got your ongoing building operations that you're dealing with day to day, and the government's always breathing down your neck with changing regulations, all the filings that are due at the end of the year, where do you stand with fines, hearings, et cetera. So you're under this kind of constant pressure to communicate to all these different groups, your tenants, your vendor network, the government, about what you're doing day to day. So technology has done a lot to kind of help change the game and really revolutionize what you're doing on a day-to-day basis by primarily bringing all this stuff into one place, helping to aggregate what is a otherwise paper process, an email, a calendar system, perhaps a filing cabinet and a clipboard. We see plenty of those around, and bring them into one platform. So, technology like SiteCompli, for example, has helped to bring in information not only from government, but also what you've got around your desk. So things that are actually, sitting there again in spreadsheets or in your filing system, and exchanged information that's between you and a property manager that isn't necessarily transparent throughout your organization. And we've been pretty successful doing this. You can see this kind of revolution. People are looking for new solutions for property operations software every day. In our particular case on SiteCompli, we've got over 10,000 users, 1.5 billion square feet is operating this kind of new way of bringing in this information all into one single platform from, again, government agencies, everything going on in your office and the like. So what I want to talk about is a couple of particular areas where technology has helped to revolutionize the property manager world. A couple of key things property managers always are dealing with. Transactions, right? You're taking over a new building, someone's refinancing, someone's buying the building, a new partner's coming into the mix. This involves your banks, this involves your insurance companies, title companies. Construction, right? Move in, move out time. Whenever you have, a new commercial tenant and they're, refitting the entire space, you've got lots of architects that you're relying on are filing the right permits, that they're keeping you up to date with what they're doing, that your tenant's, technically on the hook because of the contract you wrote with him, but at the end of the day, if something falls short, you're on the hook. Tenant interactions, of course, this is your day-to-day bread and butter, kind of ensuring that everyone's happy who's paying the bills. And then annual mailings, and Jack will be speaking a little bit more about this when it comes to things that are required of you to keep your tenants informed about regulations that the city imposes and local laws. So let's talk a little bit about the due diligence process on the transaction side, right? So you typically have this type of scenario where the owner of the building requires a refinance take place or a new purchaser is coming on board. You start to get involved in all these kind of esoteric pieces of knowledge that the title companies are really well versed in, or so you think. They usually kind of end up doing searches in the kind of archives of public records. They go to all the city municipalities and municipal agencies. They pull up things like violations and permits that are open from a tenant that left 5 years ago. Claims are coming from contractors you've never hired. And these type of things usually fall to you at the 11th hour, right? It's a week before closing. Someone finally said, yeah, we got this guy approved, but now the title has this issue. And so now you have to figure out, like, what is this problem? What's this hurdle? Is this going to prevent us from closing? You expect your attorney is going to know everything there is to know about this issue. Of course, he looks to you and says, like, the solution is just get rid of this stuff. And nobody really knows, is this something you go down to the DOB, you file a $40 form, or is this something where, like, I need to go to court and fight this guy, right? So a couple of interesting things are happening here. What people are doing, they're ensuring that they have this information in advance of the title company, right? So best practices have started to become, pull this information from multiple sources, in advance. So things like your ECB fines, your certificate of occupancy issues, all the types of things you see here that come up regularly at the 11th hour are front and center, and you're on the building operations side before it's time to refinance, right? So again, a platform like technology, like SiteCompli allows you to collect this information on an ongoing basis, but there's even reports out there that are available today that weren't there before. You needed to go through the title agency who only had a relationship with the bank. But today you can pull up information with regards to liens, for example. So, SiteCompli has got this great premium report, a SiteCompli liens report. And what it's doing is helping to empower you with knowledge, right? So instead of someone coming to you and saying, there's a sidewalk violation, and it says something about Department of Highway Operations, maybe you should call them. And you go ahead and you look up in the phone book, and there's absolutely no Department of Highway Operations. It's been defunct since 1987. And you're trying to figure out, like, well, who do I contact? So what we've done is we've kind of heard these problems over and over, and we've sought to solve them. So what we do here is, for example, tell you a little bit about what a sidewalk violation is. First off, it's actually the highway operations is now the Department of Transportation. There's specific folks within the Department of Transportation you need to reach out to when you need things like a permit to correct these things. You want to put down some new concrete, correct the outstanding issue. You don't call the Department of Buildings, you call the Department of Transportation. When you're ready to have the inspector come back out, you call 311. 311 gets in touch with the HICA division, Highway Insurance Quality Assurance Group, Highway Inspection Quality Assurance Group. Ultimately, these are the type of steps that you are sitting there just kind of befuddled. You have no idea how to deal with this, and you've got this like 3-day deadline. So what we're finding are people are reaching out to us in advance, right? We've just started the process. Someone's interested in buying the property. You don't say, great, tell me where I'm going to change my title to. But you say, let me get one of these reports, right? I'm going to find out right now, before anyone else even knows about it, if there's anything outstanding that's going to come up at the 11th hour from the title report. It's going to give me step-by-step instructions on what this is, how to interpret this record. It's not a printout of a printout that ended up at your lawyer's house and then ended up getting faxed over to your office. We're going to give you terms, right? What does effective date mean? What's that reference number? Is that good for anything? Does only the city register care about that? Or when I call up Department of Transportation, will they know what I'm saying? So this is the type of thing that powering you with information, right? This is the world of technology. It's the information age. You're looking to have this at your fingertips, and this is what technology is bringing to the game today. So we're trying to relieve some of these burdens of information from you, and also the timeliness factor. So again, kind of two ways to look at this is one, as soon as the transaction comes up, best practices are now find out this information yourself. Reach out, get one of these reports generated for you, get informed before your title attorney is kind of putting you under the gun. And then secondarily, if you're actively managing a building, think about getting one of these things on an annual basis, right? You don't receive that notification. You're not looking online at the Department of Transportation's Highway Quality Assurance 1987 records, but one day you're going to need to know about that. So it's good to, in advance, on a regular basis, kind of keep abreast of what's going on at the building. So post-closing, right? So now, oftentimes, everything went well, right? We closed, maybe some money went put in escrow for some of those weird things that nobody really knew how to handle. Everybody wants their money back. But realistically, you're in a scenario where you just took over the building. We really wanted to close before the end of the year so you could reap the tax benefits. And now it's December 23rd, and you're said, okay, give me that dossier of information about all the systems in the building, right? The boilers and the elevators. They have all those annual inspections due by the 31st. That's 8 days from today. What am I supposed to do? Well, guess what? Nobody was talking about that on the transaction side, right? Nobody was saying, what are we going to have to tell these guys about this building afterwards? Everyone just said, you know what? We'll figure that out once we take over the building, but maybe it's too late. So how do you get a kind of one-stop look at all of these kind of systems, your facade inspections, where your certificate of occupancy? Again, there's great information out there, and SiteCompli is a great technology that's aggregating a lot of this from a number of different sources. They can tell you what you're at risk for when it comes to things like your elevator inspections, digesting these kind of historic records to say, yeah, you have these violations, you've got this kind of escrow, but the fact of the matter is what you did in February qualified for your 2015 inspection, and you're still on the hook for 2016. So maybe you want to put something else in escrow, or maybe you want to ask them for their elevator contractor to take care of this prior to closing so that you're not under the gun in the last 8 days of the year trying to scramble to get this paperwork into the Department of Buildings. So again, keeping yourself informed proactively, not waiting until this information gets passed along to you and then expectations are set that you're trying to meet unrealistic demands, but just continually trying to reach out there and look, because things change, right? So when you've been dealing with buildings changing hands, you've taken over plenty of buildings, you don't want to necessarily think, well, I know what happens. They're going to drop something on my desk. It's going to be kind of like a quarter of the amount of information I need. I'm going to troll the Department of Buildings website for the rest of this. That's not the way things need to be anymore. Just like you're not waiting for your interoffice memo, don't wait for that dossier of paperwork to come from the last property manager or prior owner. Go ahead, get yourself informed, get yourself a report, help to understand what you have coming. Again, get one of these at the same time that you hear the transactions coming, and maybe that can make a difference before you take over management of the building. Construction. So a lot goes on during construction, right? I think primarily, a couple fun facts for you. Anyone can call 311, right? People in the building, you're building out a new office space in the 3rd floor, your 4th floor tenant hates that that's happening. They're always in the freight elevator, or there's always noise. You've got after hours permits that go through, but then the tenants next door, they don't know that you're allowed to work on Saturday, so they're calling 311. The DOB's actually got an 8-hour turn time on responding to 311 complaints for hazardous situations. So somebody doesn't like the way that your facade, doesn't like the way that your scaffolding looks, they can show up within a day. So what's important here? You can't be trolling the biz website every single day trying to understand what kind of violations or complaints have happened. You need technology going ahead and aggregating and bringing that front and center for you so you can passively enjoy notifications. Things like we're doing at SiteCompli are 5-minute alerts on 311 complaints. So within 5 minutes of the DOB being notified, you're notified. So guess what? That 8 hours all of a sudden looks like a lot of lead time to have some really critical conversations with your tenant, with his contractor, with the architect. I think that what's important here is the unsaid inspector visits resulting in things like stop work orders, a lot of misinformation. People don't have transparency into what information is out there. I thought you had the permit. Didn't you renew that last week? I thought we filed this information. I had this email from you, but do they have that on record at the city agency? So again, having transparency into this information in a way that you can search, right? Just like a Google search. You should be able to go into an interface. You should be able to put in a permit number. You should be able to pull up a PDF copy of this. You shouldn't be trolling through 35 pages of records from the 70s about permits in your building. So this is the type of thing that, again, technology is bringing to the fore so that you're informed, even though you expect your tenant and the contractor and architect are doing everything just right. You can all look at the same information. You can generate a report on demand. If you're a contractor, you're not going and copying and pasting a lot of information for your weekly sit-down into a spreadsheet, but in fact, you're just generating the same report. Everybody's emailed on that same report. You can all have access to transparent information. You can add notes, documents, things like that to kind of qualify anything that might seem amiss. So I think this kind of information, this real-time information, getting this kind of proactive delivery of information is the next generation. This is what's revolutionizing property management. It's no longer waiting to see what's the next fire you have to put out, but it's foreseeing those hazards that's going to burst into flames at any moment and taking care of them before they're aflame. So I'll pass it off to Jack Wurtzel.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
So, picking up where those flames were burning. The next couple of things we want to focus on are tenant interactions and some of the compliance, local law stuff that affect residential management and actually commercial management, some of the stuff too, as well. But in New York City, there's it's a fascinating real estate market, and I've heard before speakers before us mention about they're late adopters to technology, and there's this really incredible top of the world market of real estate with just starting to catch up on the technology end. So there are day-to-day interactions that we want to focus on here that SiteCompli solves, where we found that without a mix of best practices and technology, there actually is really no way to solve. So one of the things we want to talk about is tenant interactions, day-to-day tenant interactions. So tenants in your property, you have 2 tenants, you have 10 tenants, you have 10,000 tenants. They're going to be calling your office, and hopefully they're calling your office, and logging requests and complaints and various information requests. It could be anything from, something is going on in my property, I need help, I need information, I need some maintenance work done. What's fascinating is that in today's day and age, the concept of closing your management office at 5 p.m. just doesn't fly. The city services the tenants of New York 24/7 very effectively. 311 works. There are hundreds of thousands of complaints logged annually, and if you don't answer the phone, they're going to call the city. And some companies have solved it by, getting answering services or call centers and other, third-party services to handle this stuff, or voicemail. And that became what we found from our clients, is that it's very challenging because it doesn't really leave the tenant with a feeling that someone actually heard their complaint, number one. Doesn't really give them a sense of what happens next. But more importantly, what happens internally in your management office. So there's a tremendous time and effort cost of logging requests. There's staff, there's time, there's people. Spending 35 minutes with someone on the phone about a leaky sink. I've been on that other end of the line. It's not a pleasant conversation, and it's 35 minutes of your time. But you also want to spend time with this tenant about their leaky sink, and you want to resolve it. So you're sort of stuck in this world where it's affecting your day-to-day. It's costly. There isn't really a solution out there. And the interesting aspect of this whole challenge also was what to do next. So let's say you did have someone answer the phone 24/7. Let's say it went to someone's voicemail. Or let's say it ran to your cell phone even. How do you effectively log these requests? We found typically, I'm not gonna ask for a show of hands, but sticky notes. Or, well, I create a work order and mark a big question mark on it because I'm not sure if I really want to do it yet. So this is a issue, that's the sort of the kind of thing we want to solve. The call center that we have, it's a 24/7 call center, is it's a digital call center. It's automated, number one, but it's intelligent. So the tenant's information is already in the platform. When a tenant calls, it greets them by name. It knows who they are. It knows where they live. And it actually starts giving them some smart choices. What kind of issues do you have? And it's actually ordered by the popularity of the issues they're going to experience. So the first couple options are going to be the most likely options that they're going to actually experience. It walks them through in a really nice way. But the best part about this is that it also gives them an ID, information, to call back anytime 24/7 and check on the status of their request or previous requests that they've logged. And this is obviously not only popular and a great service, this is a necessity. On average in New York City, interestingly, a complaint to 311 to HPD turns into 4 violations. 1 complaint, 4 violations. In almost all of those cases, the 4 violations are unrelated to the complaint. That's a fascinating story. They called about heat, but you invited an inspector into your property, and you're going to get a violation for anything that happens to be slightly off, whether it's within your control or not in your control. So we've seen like a heat call could lead to a B class or a C class hazardous violation because there's no 9-volt battery in the smoke detector. That's crazy. So what this solution solves is not only allows your office to be extended 24/7 in a meaningful way, an intelligent way, the way that tenants, we know who the tenants are, we log the request, and allow you to operate in a really efficient way and reduce that sort of headache and risk. But one of the most fascinating parts about this service is actually the second part, after the call comes in. And that solves the sticky note question mark issue. How are requests triaged? Tenant calls in, says, I want a new kitchen. It's 3 days before their lease renewal. Do we do it? Is there a work order? Is there not work order? Is there a work order with a question mark? Are we not sure? Well, depending if they renew their lease. These are actually critical decisions that we are all making every single day, consciously and subconsciously, in real time. And it's costing us a lot of money. We need the ability to log the triaging process, get the right people, the right information so they can make smart, intelligent decisions, and, very important, have historical information. Know what happened to who, when. So a couple case points, like if someone calls this system and logs a request about leaky sink, it immediately alerts the various people you've set up, the super, the contractor, the manager, yourself, based on any set of rules that you customize. You then have the information, you can make a call. You could also forward it to someone else in your organization to triage, to approve. And you run through this one-click work order scenario where you can actually fix these issues and take action on these issues immediately, but meaningfully, and more importantly, in the future, if there ever was a condition where, let's just say you're at L&T court, right? Or you're making a different decision, you want to see right now, one click, who called, how often do they call, what they call about, and what did I do about it? that stuff today, even with the best of record keeping, could take someone hours to log and pull out of different drawers. This is a kind of thing that logging this information in a meaningful way is, we believe, not only a perfect mix of best practice, but also a use of technology that really is becoming critical to managing property in New York City. The next thing, the final thing we want to talk about is much more specific. It's a local law of the annual mailings in New York City. I'm sure many of you are familiar. Hopefully all of you are familiar with this. And what it is, it's a compilation of a bunch of laws from different years that essentially, in a very specific format, in a very specific way, you have to mail out information about window guard disclosures, children in the apartment, lead paint disclosures, fire safety information, both what to do in case of a fire and where the egresses are in the property. Very specifically formatted information to your tenants of 3 units and above, multifamily buildings. Again here, it's an interesting case point to talk about because it's a world where we met this old school print and lick an envelope and stamp it and put it in the mail world where people really thought that they're doing what they need to be doing. And it turns out we're not. They're complying with half of the law at best. So we take on this challenge head on and we've said, okay, there's a very, very specific requirements actually governed by 3 different agencies that manage how to do this. That's crazy. But we compile that information. We create one click, literally one click. We take your building information, we take your unit information, your tenant information, your required fire safety information, instruction in 6 languages, compile it the way it's supposed to be compiled, and send it to your tenant on your behalf. So we automate it. And it's been incredibly successful because it's very cost effective and it's really a great service. But that's, again, the early part of it. That part, theoretically, if you're printing in your office, with the tens of hours and time and cost of doing it yourself, but let's just say you're doing it yourself, or you hired a printer to fulfill this for you, that's not really the magic is. The magic is what happens next. So say you manage 50 units or 50,000 units. The tenant gets this information, gets a tearaway card, and an envelope to mail it back to your office. You end up with a continuous stream of response mail. Hopefully they're responding. Let's start with that. But if they are responding, you're going to end up with a continuous stream of mail coming into your office for the next 8 months. And there is no way anyone would be able to know who responded with what information and what do I need to do about it. What's interesting is that not only is that important, there are all kinds of laws that kick in based on whether someone responded or didn't respond, or what the content of the response was. And that, without tracking this information, you are essentially not in compliance with some really critical laws. Besides non-compliance, because I've actually heard someone say, well, you know, I've never received a fine for this, so I'm okay. Besides non-compliance of local laws, there is a significant exposure to risk. On a very personal, and we've seen a case of criminal level, if someone did respond in theory that they have a child and they need a window guard, and you did not take action on that, and something, God forbid, happens, you now have serious exposure to some really big issues, and we've seen case studies where this has happened. People were charged with some pretty significant, scary stuff. This is the kind of thing you don't want to mess up on across the board, both with local law compliance, actually HPD recently, and because we have such a large group of clients right now, we're able to start studying trends as well, which is really fascinating. But we get to see what's happening across the city. So when we see movement from a certain agency, we see a pattern. HPD and DOH are starting to enforce audits much more frequently about this. Well, they'll come out, they'll issue an audit, and they'll say, okay, now prove that you have this information. And guess what? The law requires you to prove it back 10 years. And we help clients walk through that. But one of the things the system does is that not only does it send it out, it logs it, it tracks responses. Responses don't go back to you. They go back to a dedicated response center where they're automatically coded They're QR code and barcoded where the responses come in. They're automatically digitized, scanned, tracked with the contents of the response. And then we layer on, so you could track in real time what's going on, who responded, what they have to do, and what you need to do. But we layer on the laws and the meaningfulness to you, so you get action reports. So you can look up to see who responded and what happens to be the case in their apartment, as far as window guards or lead paint or issues. But also you can run a report saying, regardless of what the content response were, what do I need to do today to be in compliance? What's the next step? And we're able to take the information that we've compiled from various agencies and give that in a really meaningful, useful next step way. And then there's things where, for example, you have to inspect units. You have to find out if someone didn't respond. You have to knock on the door. You have to make sure that knock on the door is logged. How do you log a knock on the door, right? And that's where some really cool technology kicks in, where you have an app, and as you walk around, all the information of the units in that property show up on your app. And as you knock on the door, you can log an inspection right there and track that information for reporting and auditing purposes. And we've seen some really cool success stories when it comes to this.
Just to interrupt for 1 second.
Sure.
Integration with existing systems, like say, your property management system, your accounting system, just to have a single database of tenants and structure, like who lives where.
Absolutely.
How does that
Yeah. So actually, this is the end of this piece of information. Cover a lot of the old way, new way. I'll address it in a second. We'll come back to it. We covered the old way. The old way doesn't work, and there only is a new way. And technology is the only way that's humanly possible. One of what you mentioned that is that just going back to sort of cover on all 4 points of what we do at SiteCompli, right? So we automate. Our main core technology is we automate the data gathering of information from various city, state, federal agencies, and in real time on your behalf. So anything that you need to know about anything in or around your property that has any kind of meaningful next step for you to know about, you know about in real time. That's SiteCompli. Layered on top of that are really cool tools, and that's where the call center, tenant request logging, one-click work order integration, and that's another place where we integrate with software, and I'll talk about it right now. And then you have tenant tracking, such as litigation and L&T cases and collaboration, online document storage, and mailings, and all that other stuff. The integrations right now, SiteCompli has all the data that you have, that we aggregate on your behalf, and that you use internally. This works very well hand in hand with current systems. And our clients use the full gamut of the systems out there. Everything from Yardi and RealPage down to AppFolio and Remote Landlord and everything in between. The way it works right now is we don't actively sync with any particular system, but we're used alongside a particular system, but the information is exported and importable both ways very, very elegantly. So much so that even systems that focus on financials, rent roll and rent collection, and have we also have work orders on the side. Those kind of companies are often our clients would use our work order platform and just integrate it, link it up, and reference the work orders back to their GL software. So it works very well in conjunction right now, and everything that we build is designed that way. We recognize that core software out there that exists, like the Yardis of the world, exist to help mostly the financial, the GL, and the collection of the rent processes, right? But they really sort of, let's face it, I'll say it, they sort of drop the ball when it comes to everything else. New entrants in the market focus a lot on the lease process, right? The showings, the brokers, the screenings, a lot of really cool technology out there, really nice stuff. But we focus, and our main core here is building operations. And as it links up to compliance. And they're so linked that there's no way to separate them. So when it comes to tracking who paid what, that's the core management system. But if you need a system that works with that seamlessly, but tracks everything from when's the last time I changed my 9-volt batteries across my 40,000 smoke detectors, there's nothing out there except SiteCompli, and that's where we shine.
I guess I'm speaking mostly to the actual data integration of the contacts.
Yeah.
Residents.
Residents, move-in, move-outs, and units themselves, import, export. Yeah.
Do you have any sort of API?
We do not have an API.
Is that on the roadmap?
Sure. Yeah. The funny thing with the API is that it's easy to do an API when you have a specific target Let's say if we're going to call the API. If we have a REST API, everyone can come into us, sure. But if we're going to go, let's say, actively integrate with someone like a Yardi, right? There's everyone. People use so many different platforms out there that we want to be used by everyone. And that's what the world we're staying in. But yes, API is definitely on the map. Cost. The cost of SiteCompli is the core product, which is the online software, unlimited uses, comes out to about $1 a unit per month, or $1 for 1,000 square feet per month. The mailings comes out to $3.99 a unit. It's once a year. It's a no-brainer. The mailings are really a no-brainer. I mean, besides the fact that the law requires sending it in first-class mail, that just a very cost. This actually, it's cheaper than doing it in-house. $4.99 includes $3.99. Sorry, includes postage paid response cards and respond by phone and by web and all this inspection software I talked about. That's an add-on, but the core platform is $1 a unit a month.
Kind of due diligence reports that I was talking about earlier about $99 for a
And your clients are mostly large owners, small owners, both?
Both large, small, and interesting range of actual clients. So we have everything from small ma-pa shops or someone that has a 3-unit home that they rent out for income, and they use this very actively day-to-day, software. And then it could be someone like a REIT overlooking a portfolio. There's a lot of risk assessments and managing risk that's included in this kind of platform, so you can see what kind of exposure you have, and that can include clients anywhere from the very large commercial clients and residential clients, and all the way to REITs and even lenders and brokers.
Okay. I think we'll probably wrap it up here, if
Sure.
you don't mind, and you guys will be around for questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, we're here. We'll be walking around.
All right.
All right.
Round of applause for SiteCompli.
Thanks enough. Thanks, buddy.